to Southern Songbird Farm. I am Carrie and today we are in the kitchen / dining area to can some applesauce. So it is, like I said in the canning of the pumpkin video, it is spooky season. People are visiting orchards, and take this as an opportunity to put some apples away for later. So there's lots of different ways to preserve apples in jars. You can do apple pie filling, you can do applesauce, you can do apple rings. The ways are numerous, but today we're going to focus on applesauce. And so let me tell you what you're going to need. So applesauce is an acidic food. Apples have enough acid to safely be canned in a water bath canner. So you can get a water bath canner pretty inexpensively. Some people just use a big pot, but the most important thing is you get a rack or something that'll keep those jars off of the bottom of the pot. So if you buy a water bath canner, they come with a little jar rack. So that's just something to keep in mind, and they're very inexpensive. So it would be a good investment if you plan on canning. Okay, we're gonna need a big pot to cook our apples. So stainless steel, non-stick, it doesn't matter, anything would be fine. Just a nice large pot for cooking. Of course, you're gonna need utensils, a ladle for putting into jars. I like to use silicone spoons as opposed to wood spoons. It's really your preference. You're gonna need a jar lifter to get out your completed jars. A lot of the beginning canning kits will include this little tool, which is a spatula that you can use to get air bubbles out, but it also has the headspace here. So let me get my jar. The headspace, that would be 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and an inch. So this is kind of a nice little tool to have, but it is not necessary. Of course, we're gonna need jars. I am still debating between pints and quarts for applesauce. I love it, but there's a couple people in our family that don't, so I think I'm gonna maybe do pints today, but we will let you know. Then you're gonna need a jar funnel so that you can put your hot apples or applesauce into your jars. You're gonna need new lids. So these are a little hard to come by right now because of the coronavirus, but it is very important that you do not reuse lids because they cannot be guaranteed to seal again if they've already been used. So make sure you have brand new lids. Now, if you go out, you're new to canning, and you go to buy jars, they will come with rings and lids, and those are the ones you can use. If you are reusing jars and you need to get new lids, make sure that you have saved rings. You can save these and reuse them basically until they get too rusty and pitted to use. So just, if you've saved them and you're pulling them out of storage, just make sure you give them a little look and make sure they're okay. I would never do any canning without my canning Bible. This is the Blue Book Guide of Preserving by Ball. It is very important that you use recipes that have been tested because you don't want to make your family sick. And I know that we all have a granny or an aunt or a so-and-so in our life that has done canning and water bath canned potatoes or something of that nature, but I am a nurse and I am kind of a germaphobe. I don't like to take those risks with my family, so I always make sure I use a tested recipe. If you don't want to go buy a book, that is okay. There are numerous websites out there, and I will put some links to some below. Now, for apples specifically, these are kind of extra things. You can do all of this with a knife, okay? You don't have to have anything fancy, but I like to just show what's out there. So this is an apple peeler. You put the apple on here, and you can core, peel, and slice all at the same time. So we'll show you how to use that in a little bit. And then the other thing that it would be a great investment for you if you're thinking about canning your own tomato sauce or apples or anything like that is a food strainer. So your food goes in here, you crank it, and it's like a food mill. So you can get one that's a little bit bigger and more complicated like this, or you can just get a normal food mill that's very inexpensive that sits on top of your pot, and you just crank it and the food goes through. But this is something that we will use today, so you'll get to see it in action. So last but not least, if you're gonna can apples, you need apples, right? So I like Cortland apples. My very good friend, Lynn Whitley, is a firm believer in Cortland apples for applesauce making and canning. And the reason being is because they're a very nice, firm baking type apple, although they are delicious just for fresh eating. But they have this beautiful pink skin, so they give your applesauce a lovely, lovely tint. So I have got 4 1/2 pecks of these. That's what we're gonna be using today, and we will see you in the kitchen. All right, so we have washed all of our apples. We've washed all of our utensils. The other thing I would say to go ahead and do at this point is go ahead and get your water bath canner on the stove and start getting that water hot. It's a lot of water and takes a long time to heat up. So I've got that simmering over there so it's ready when I need it. Washed and cleaned my jars and they'll be in there nice and hot when we need it. But right now we gotta prepare the apples. So there's a couple of ways to do this. We're going to be making applesauce, but you can use this to make apple rings. You can quarter apples and can them that way. Again, find a good book that you trust that's had good testing and use it to do whatever you want. So for applesauce, because we love these Cortland apples, Doug, you'll hold that up. It's got the most beautiful skin and it turns the applesauce a really pretty pink color. So we are not going to peel our apples. We are going to leave the peel on, but we are going to core them and slice them so they'll cook down faster. And then when we run them through the food mill, it will get the skin out. So Doug, go ahead and demonstrate all the different ways you can use this apple peeler.
Okay. So we have to put it together. It's in a box. So this tip screws off. I'll show you. And the handle screws off, and then these mechanisms all compact. So it comes in a box, but it's real easy to do. So you just screw this 3-prong tip on and screw the handle on. So the options that we have, and you want to make sure you get it centered as much as possible. So with this is a core, and also the same one that makes rings. So you can core them out and make rings without peeling, or you can take this and move it up and peel with it. Move this down, get this out of the way. And get this down out of the way so I can just peel, or I can center this up. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get it centered, because if it runs off, the core is not going to be exactly right. So you want that core to be able to go through that hole. So then you can core like that. Okay.
Or
I can release this back and I can core and peel. Now you'll see it's ripping through there and it makes a pretty little mess, but when it's all said and done, you have these little strings of apples in it. They're great for cooking down. They will cook down really, really quick.
Yep. And there is another option if you want to. Typically, applesauce recipes will tell you to peel, core, and like quarter or slice your apples. If you want to save the peels, I also have made apple peel jelly, which is fabulous. So if you want to save your peels, you can use it for that. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're going to get all these apples sliced up, and we will be back shortly. Okay, we are ready to start cooking down the apples. So Brassy, if you want to come a little closer, you can see that we've got our apple rings in here with the peels on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a pint jar's worth of water in the bottom. You don't want to put a ton of water in here, just enough to keep them from sticking to the bottom. So at first, I'm going to turn this on like medium high, and then I'm going to start stirring this as they cook down. You don't want them to necessarily come to boiling yet, but you definitely want them to cook down. Once they get kind of cooked down, we're going to go over to our food mill and we're going to run through the food mill, which will get any pieces of skin or little seeds that got stuck or anything like that out of our apples, and make it that nice, smooth, silky consistency for our applesauce. So we're going to cook this down and we'll meet you at the food mill. All right, we've got a pot of very hot apple that we are ready to run through our food mill. So Doug, you can talk a little bit about your setup.
Okay, so the food mill, as well as the peeler and core, it's disassembled, so we have to put it together. But the thing about this is you have to have a good sturdy surface. If it's not locked down and you go to cranking on it, it will start flopping sideways, because this processor right here, this thing, if you turn it inside there and it doesn't have stuff in it, it's so tight that it will get hot. So it takes a pretty good amount of strength to turn this thing to make it do what it's supposed to do. So basically you have a corkscrew in here with a handle and a spring, a screen, has a different type of screen, and then a dump chute, which puts the waste in here, and then this one right here is for the actual sauce that we're going to cook to make the applesauce. And then this here's a tub, which you just dump it in so it'll go down. So it has this little thing, and you can push it down, a little plunger, push it down in there. So we're going to get started here. We'll put some in here, and then you can kind of see how this goes. We got all kinds of the peeling and stuff, and all the peels and everything will actually come out in that.
So what we'll do is we'll collect, as the good sauce comes out in this pan, we'll collect it into another big pot for right now. And then we'll be ready to cook it down and get it boiling to put in the applesauce jars. Okay, so we've got some juice coming out.
Yeah, we've got the...
Here comes the skins out here.
Carrie, if you want to put that in there, I'll keep turning here. And this thing, you think this stuff being cooked down like it is, it would actually just flow right in, but you, with the peelings and stuff in it, you've actually got to give it a little bit of encouragement to get it to go through.
Now I'm going to give you all a different option if you don't want to go ahead and spend the money on a food mill. What you can do is, if you're going to take off all your peels to begin with, you really could run this with maybe an immersion blender if you wanted very smooth applesauce, or you could just use a potato masher if you like chunky applesauce. So you don't necessarily have to do the food mill. I just like the food mill, especially because it just gives you that really nice texture of your applesauce. But it's completely up to you guys. Be super careful. As you can tell, we have covered the table with a tablecloth. Make sure you have shoes on, because this stuff is napalm hot and you do not want it spreading on you. So we will continue to mill our applesauce, and we'll meet you back at the stove. Okay, so we have got our delicious applesauce all put through the food mill. And this is it right here. Thanks, Patsy, for getting closer there. Now I am stirring this down because as soon as I stop, it starts boiling and bubbling over. But that is what we want. So the recipe says you should keep it boiling at 212 degrees while you are putting it in the jars. I don't want it to, bubble all over me in the stove, but I do keep it at a low heat. So I've got this burner back on higher heat, got this one on a little bit lower heat, and I'll move it back and forth as I need to. If you want to add sugar at this point, you can. This is a very sweet apple, so we're not adding any sugar. And if you want to add cinnamon, cloves, or other spices based on your recipe, this would be the time to add it as well and mix it in. Now, the other thing that we have to do is, when you get your cans out of the hot canner, make sure you're very careful when you empty the water out. And then what we're going to do is get our jar funnel, which is right back here, and we're going to fill it up, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch headspace for sauce. So very carefully with this hot sauce. But see that beautiful pink color you get from leaving those skins and the Cortland apples? It's just gorgeous. So we're going to fill this up. We're looking for that 1/2 inch headspace. You get really good at this as you go along. Okay, so I'm going to just gently tap that down. This is very hot again, so be very careful. Use my little spatula here to push, make sure there's no air bubbles in it anywhere. And then I'm going to check my headspace. So I can check it with this. So it's a 1/2 inch. I am just a teeny tiny bit shy. 1/2 inch is just over this last ring right here as you would screw your lid on. I'm going to put just a teeny tiny bit in the top because it's just a hair under 1/2 inch. Again, I'm going to tap it down. Wear an oven mitt if you have sensitive fingers. And then it's very important to always wipe the rim of your jar before you put your lid on, because if there's any food caught in there, it's going to prevent your jar from sealing. So we're gonna put our lid on, get a ring. Again, making sure that there's no rust or anything in your rings if you saved them. And then I'm just going to put this on finger tight. So I'm not cranking it down. I'm just putting it on finger tight, and we're gonna get it right back in the canner. Applesauce actually process is the same for pints and quarts. So whichever one you did, it's 20 minutes. So once I get them in the canner, I'll show you how to determine that you're at a full rolling boil. All right, so we have all of our jars in the canner. Doug, you can come a little closer if you want. And what I want to do is our 20-minute time does not start until it's at a full rolling boil. So I'm going to put my lid on, put it on high, and what I'm going to wait for is to show you a trick that the canning teacher at the class I went to showed me. If you put your oven mitt on and you feel the side of your canner, and it gets to that full rolling boil, say that 3 times fast, you're going to feel it vibrating, and then you can peek and look. But you don't want to keep lifting up your lid all the time because you're just losing all that heat, and it creates a little bit of pressure to help your boil. So if you kind of feel that and give you a little peek, eventually you're going to get so good at it that you can tell when you're at your rolling boil, and then you can start it. Another thing I will say is once you get to that full rolling boil, you can turn your heat down just a little bit to maintain the boil. It doesn't have to be cranked at high the whole time because sometimes it'll excessively boil and you'll get dripping out of on your stove and stuff like that. So 20 minutes from my full rolling boil, we will see you back and get these guys out of the canner. An important point I forgot to make when we were starting the canning process for this applesauce is, unlike pressure canning, where the water only comes to about here in your canner, it is imperative that in a water bath canner that the boiling water is above the line of your jars. So sometimes when you're doing quarts, that can be a little difficult because you're real up close to the top to do that. But we want to make sure that we've got heat going all the way around the jars, bottom, top, sides, everything, because that's how it processes for us. So this has got 2 seconds. All right, and I'm just going to turn this heat off. This is super hot, so make sure that you use a cloth to put this up on. Ideally, I would move this off the heat, but I'm processing some more apples, so I'm going to leave it right where it is. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can let it cool a little bit and then use your mitts to pull your jar rack up and over, and it'll hang there on your canner, or you can just go right in and get them out. So just real carefully, I sometimes will give them just a little tip just to get that water off the top, and then I'll set them out. And as you set them out, this one's not really doing it too much. It's a pretty thick liquid. If you do see a little bit of bubbling and things that you're canning, that is okay, because this is absolutely boiling hot. But these look really good. Hopefully we'll be able to hear when the lids pop. That is one of the most rewarding things in canning, is hearing that lid pop sealed shut, which is awesome. And you know it's done what it's gonna do. Every once in a while you will also get a little bit of food, possibly like during the sealing process, it'll sometimes sneak out and bubble through the lid, and even though it seals, it is definitely sealed, it'll sometimes make the outsides of your jars a little bit sticky. It doesn't mean that it's not sealed. If you've got a seal, you'll know it. So once an item is canned and sealed and all of your lids are popped down, I recommend not storing it with the ring on. You should be able to take your ring off and just store it on the shelf as is. That will let you know really quickly if you do have one that's spoiled, because it will, if the lid comes off and a little bit loose, you're going to be able to see it bubble out of the jar. And if you keep the ring on tight, you may not notice that if you did have a jar go bad. So that's just something to think about. If you have any questions at all, please comment below. I'll try to get back to you on those. If you have any other recipes that you have a question about that you'd like for me to try or do a demonstration on, I'll be happy to do that as well. Just comment. Make sure to subscribe to us on here and hit that notification bell so you'll know when we've got new videos for you. Definitely follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we do a ton of posting there through the week, and it'll help you follow along with us in our farming journey. And otherwise, oh, they're popping. Yay, that's always a good sign. So on that note, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.